John's words that rung true to me were, your constituents come first. The issues in your riding come first. The party comes second. And at the end of the day, isn't that why we put our checks beside a person's name? We want that person to represent us. That doesn't mean I got to sell out my values or agree with every single value of every single constituent. But it means that we're going to take the issues that are important in our riding and bring them forward to that one place to debate those issues, which is the floor of the legislature. To bring those questions up during question period. To be able to go into another minister's office or go talk to my colleagues and take those issues that those people have. And that's what won me over. And since then, I don't know about you guys, but I've been having the time of my life. I found my voice again. And the people in my riding were saying, where's that Bruce that we know and love that, you know, can stand up like that scrappy little dog that he can be and fight on our behalf? Where's he been? And now I'm back. And as a result of that, I think that the people in this province have been waiting to hear exactly that. There was a wave that was coming, and I was picking up on it. And I knew that there were people that were incredibly unhappy with how things were going. Whether you are a healthcare worker that lost your job because you were scared to go get the jab, and I don't know why we haven't hired them back yet. We're the only province in all of Canada, one of the outliers in the world, that refused to hire these people back. My daughter was in the system, and I don't know whether some of you heard, but it literally was like going into a third world. And I spoke with her. What you didn't hear, and I spoke with her last night, is her bathroom was not cleaned for 5 days, and there was a bloody gauze that was on the floor in her bathroom, and because people were lined up out in the hallway, they were using her. Now she was in a room of 2, which is fine, and they were using her bathroom, also fine. But the fact that it was not cleaned for 5 days, I thought it was 4, and she said, no, Dad, it was 5. And then there was a adult diaper with feces on the floor that was not cleaned for, I think, about 10 hours, even though she complained about it. That's just not acceptable. So we need these people back on the front lines. One nurse, one doctor is important. We need them back on the front lines. Some emergency rooms are being shut down because we don't have the person to do the blood work, to actually read the blood work, what's called an MLA, medical lab assistant. And there are so many issues that everyday common Joe lunchbox, whatever you want to call that, are finding out they're paying more and more and more in taxes and getting less and less and less. And it's becoming harder and harder and harder to put food on the table. And we have the same concerns. What are our grandkids going to do to be able to buy a house? I have 3 grandkids. One's in Australia on a working visa. She's a marine biologist. She's probably going to find somewhere else in the world to go fulfill her dream. And as much as that breaks my heart that my granddaughter's going to move away, what fills it is it's her dream. Then I have another one that's getting his PhD in sports management. I don't know where he'll end up, but it's his dream. And the third one is 11, just trying to make it to 12. And him and his dad go at it one another. He's a pretty strong 11-year-old. But I don't want to have the conversation with him when I'm loading his stuff up in his car and he's leaving the province. I say, Papa, you were there. Why didn't you fight for me? You know, my number of spins around the sun that I got left in my life are a heck of a lot less than his. And I believe that the goal of all politicians, all of us, is not to vote for the party that's going to do something for us necessarily. It's the party that has the vision to do something for the generations coming up behind us. And we all know with this current government, there is no free lunch. They use promise after promise after promise to con people into voting for them, but they are not voting, I believe, in the right areas for the future of this province. And that has to change, and that has to end. Even the dog agrees with me. The dog's going, no, no, no MVP. But in order to win, and John and I have done our bit, we have taken an obscure party, and trust me, Kevin Falcon, I hope he lies awake at night in a cold sweat, thinking, why did I kick John out? Why did I kick John out? Why didn't I listen to Bruce more? Why didn't I listen to Bruce more? That's on him. And it's no longer a case of splitting the vote, by the way.
They were splitting the vote.
They're now splitting the vote. That's exactly right. A vote for them is literally a vote for the NDP. But in order to win, we got to do a couple things. The first thing we got to do is we got to get some great candidates. And that brings me to Bryan. So Bryan has been in this community for a long, long time. He served as an RCMP, got to the rank of sergeant. He did that for 20 years. He's been a part of, I think, something all near and dear to your hearts, the Crescent Beach Swim Club. He's been involved in Crescent Beach organizations. He's been involved in White Rock organizations. He's a member of the Elks. This is a guy that's already paid his dues in his community. This is what you want, is someone that's already been there and helping and volunteering, because the paychecks aren't that great, right?
Not the greatest in the world.
Maybe the RCMP one was okay.
That was okay.
Yeah, it was okay.
Keeps me going.
That kept you going, kept food there, but
Yeah.
you know, and to this day, I understand you still volunteer your time with Elks.
Yeah.
As a bartender, I think you told me.
Yeah, bartending for them for fun.
So I'm going to let Bryan tell you about himself because he's got a lot of things, but I want you to welcome the next MLA of this area, of the White Rock area. I want you to you go to the conservativebc.ca, you pick the biggest number that you can find. And the beauty is here we are. You want to do it. Here we are coming up to the end of the year. The tax part, you get really great tax donations on that, but that's not why you should do it. That just is one more reason. Do what you think is affordable, what's comfortable for you, and then what you do is you get that. If you do it before the end of the year, you'll get this year's tax donation. And so you may want to, if you've only got a certain budget, you may want to break it in half for this year and then do it again in January because you'll get another tax donation come January. But we do need money to win, and I would encourage everyone there to do their thing and donate towards the Conservative Party of British Columbia.
So first of all, and I make myself a little cue card here, but I've got to thank Karen donating your house to this, giving us this fabulous view, this fabulous place to be, and helping with all the food. Thank them very much. If everybody could just give them a hand for me. Appreciate that. And I've been asked this a few times today, and I was going to cover it anyway, but why am I running? So what I've seen over the last little while is an erosion of basically our civil rights, of what's going on in this, all across Canada, but specifically now into this province. And we have been probably, if I use the word worst, I mean, a little bit negative connotation to that, but you know, we look what happened over COVID. It started off fine, but then everything shut down. Nobody was allowed to do anything. You weren't allowed to have Christmas with your family. I think it's a tragedy what they did to the people in homes. The nursing homes around the province, they weren't allowed to visit families as their last few months and years, and they don't see their children and grandchildren. Very upset by all of that. So in the meantime, I was invited out by a few people. Brent was one of them at the back who invited me out to the first meeting that I went to with the Conservative BC. And I really liked what I heard, and John was there for that one, although actually I had been to a meeting and helped out with Harmon in the previous by-election, but I was not as deeply involved and as entrenched as I could be with that. So with the new meeting, I got in, we started up our riding association. We kept going from there, and it's just grown. I still wasn't committed to running at any point until we came to the point where BC United and the NDP had a nice vote about who handled the COVID and the trucker protest. And they condemned the truckers, and they said they all handled the COVID very well. Now, whatever your personal feelings is, things could have been done better than the rest of Canada. I don't think so. So that was sort of the final straw with the healthcare situation our province has been pushed into and exposed by the whole COVID pandemic. I remember a few years back, I had the foolish decision to shoot a gun with a police dog. It's not a good idea, just so you know. I was in training with the police dogs at the time. The dog didn't like that, jumped at me from very far away, flew over my head, but my bottom of my leg there, it spiraled through the bone, split it apart. I had to go to surgery from Williams Lake, actually, I was in at the time, but went to Kamloops. And it was an eye-opener where we went there and sat in a room with 4 people, and they said, you can't have surgery because we have one surgery room open, and we're not going to spend the money to open another surgery room. There was a 75-year-old man. He had fallen off his truck, got an infection, broke his thigh. He was there longer than I was. He was there 2 days before, and he got surgery after me. But he left him there that whole time. They left him there that whole time because they wouldn't open it up. And it was coming up to Canada Day. They said, we'll leave it till after Canada Day. I did have the good fortune. My mother was an administrator in the health system out of Cranbrook. So she ended up calling up, talking about some things and, liability and whatnot with having these people sitting here. And I guess at some point, whether that helped or not, they did open a second surgery room, and then they started putting us through. But I sat for 5 days, couldn't move, sitting in bed with my leg broken. It was unpleasant to say the least, but that was quite a few years back now, and things have just gotten worse. We didn't have people sitting lined up in the hallways 20 years ago. We didn't have any of that. I go back to the 80s though, and I talk about my mother, and she had said, this can't last. What we're doing is crazy. And this was probably when I was just graduating high school, 1989, 1988, somewhere around there. And she was saying, this is just gonna get worse and worse. She could see it back then, and then she started off as a nurse. She wasn't, an administrator anywhere else or anything else, and moved into all of that. But she just said that the system can't handle it. What are we doing here, right? We now come to the point where we've got cancer patients that are choosing MAID, assisted suicide, instead of waiting for their treatment because they don't know when they're getting their treatment. That fellow on the island waited 28 days, which was the time frame they said you get it in, and they still couldn't give him a day. We have doctors that we need to hire back. We had a doctor, and this is out of Ontario, mind you, but she came from England, had come here, was working for 6 months, good to work. They were happy with her. They wouldn't extend her visa because she's not married, didn't have children, and over, I think it's the age of 45 there, whether that's the same age here, but she has to get sent back. That's a doctor that's been practicing here. We're just gonna get rid of her. It makes no sense what we're doing. So there needs to be common sense brought back to our medical care. I think that's the first thing we do, is have people that are willing to stand up and say, there's something wrong, we've got to do something. We've got too many that just say, well, we've got the greatest healthcare system in the world. And I think we describe that as Stockholm Syndrome now. But we're going to move, we've got to move forward on that. The policing in this province, that ties in with the provincial overreach that we have right now with the NDP. NDP are reaching into the municipal, they're taking over, they introduced some differences into the emergencies that they can now just come in, and if there's an emergency declared, whether it be the World Health Organization themselves, they can come in and they can basically take your property, decide to do with it what they will. That's just pure and simple overreach. What they did with the RCMP, and we've got Paul, he's trying to save the RCMP in Surrey, and what they've done with this mess is just beyond, right? We don't have a police force that's really functional at this point. They've got 2 different police forces, neither one is fully staffed, nobody wants to transfer anybody back and forth. It's simple provincial overreach that caused this problem. The NDP stepped in and said, here's what the municipality has to do. And it's not right. So they have since changed the law so that they do have that power, so it'll be interesting to see how that works now. But it was, simple overreach again on their part. We have a mental health crisis on our streets. White Rock didn't used to have what they've got now. You can drive by and see a tiny little tent city they've got set up by the bank at 152 and 16th.
Yeah.
There's no place for those people to go. We're now housing people in the psych ward in the hospital. They have no place they can put those people. So we've got these people up somewhere. We're letting them out on the streets. But for anybody else that needs mental health care, they can't get in because we've got people that have been there for months upon months because they have nowhere to release them to. We have to provide places like that. My suggestion, of course, is we open up mental health facilities that we used to have that they shut down to show that they had a better budget back in the 90s, which happened to be the NDP again. But, you know, that's what we end up with them. Our school system. I think a lot of the people here are worried about the school system and what they're doing with SOGI. Not a good system. It hasn't been good. Lots of teachers deal with it probably okay. They're not pushing it on it, but it takes one teacher in a school, and every kid passes through that, and they have the backing, I guess, is to say, well, it's okay because of SOGI, I can tell these kids anything. When you've got a teacher, and this is from personal experience, telling your child, don't tell your parents this, they won't understand. That's not acceptable. You know something's wrong at that point. So it has to be wiped out basically, and we start from scratch on what we do. Everybody's accepted, that's great. We want everybody to be accepted. We don't want to put other people, and we don't want cover for these teachers that have a social agenda, a woke social agenda. Resource development. Our resource development has been stagnant, right? From the federal government stepping in with their government overreach into the provinces, but the NDP doesn't want anything anyway. We've just had a request from Fortis to put a pipeline to deliver natural gas they say is necessary along the one that they already have, so they're not disturbing anything, into the Okanagan to heat people's homes. It gets cold in the Okanagan. The province has shut that down. They said you can't have it. So we're going to have shortages if the population in that area continues to grow. It's just going to lead to shortages of natural gas, which is their predominant heating system. What are they going to do when they can't provide the gas for these people? And necessity, the price goes up as well. We already can't afford what we've got going on. We happen to be, you know, lucky in our affluent area down here, but throughout the rest of the province, there's people that struggle. I mean, there's people in this area that struggle, don't get me wrong, but we also have more that are out in the areas in the rest of this province that are struggling. We have, well, I mean, you hear it from the federal government. The food banks are run ragged right now. They're actually thinking about shutting the one in North Surrey because they just can't compete with anything. They can't get any food in because people aren't donating and they can't get the food to the people. So it's horrendous. We need to develop our natural resources. We need to get the pipeline so we can get our resources out of this province and make money. That brings it back to the healthcare. How do we fund our healthcare? Through our resource development. Why we don't have any look to the future, and as Bruce covered here, there's no thought of the future in any of this. They've canceled our bridge. We have backup still to this day. The bridge was supposed to be completed last year. They've got nothing going on a tunnel that really can't handle the traffic that's already there that they're planning on building. So what thought of there is there of the future? And I don't want to keep going on the negative part of that, but we need to develop these things. We get in, we can start moving these things forward, we can make things better. Lines are the most safe and economical way of delivering our resources from oil, natural gas, to anywhere in the province. Why they aren't being developed is a crime in itself. We're not producing the money for ourselves. We're not getting the supplies that our population is going to demand in the next 10 years, and we're not getting seized to make money so that we can actually pay for our health care. And healthcare, I'm going to keep going. Everything kind of runs back to healthcare with me. Hire back our heroes. Why we haven't hired them back? I think there's only one other jurisdiction outside of Canada that hired back the people that didn't get the vaccine. So whether you think it's ineffective, effective, what your thought was on that, these people are now ready to go, get back. So many of them have left the province. It's going to be hard to hire back. We then need to start training new doctors, new nurses within our province. Get them here, get them trained, get them working. It's a long-term solution. We've got to start now. You can't just say everything's in the future. I want to say thanks to everybody that's donated. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Bruce, thank you very much for being here. It's been a pleasure. I always love listening to you. Bruce has the great voice, and he talks very well. I appreciate that.